Hi, welcome to another edition of Land and Legacy by Griffith Realty. I'm Scott Griffith and my sister Carol Griffith, and we own Griffith Realty together. And we're really pleased that you could be watching today. So today we're doing a little bit of what's the process. Sometimes we forget that there's so many new first-time home buyers out there, and a lot of people don't know how the process actually goes about being done so that you could end up with real estate, because real estate is such a great investment. And you say to yourself, it's time to be thinking about it. What do I do first? So with that, I thought maybe Carol and I would start to walk through that. So Carol, what do you counsel people when they first say, I'm thinking of buying real estate for the first time?
Well, I think the important part is to actually talk with a realtor, talk to a professional, someone who is in this day-to-day business, to guide someone through the process. So being a first-time buyer can be exciting. It can be a little intimidating, but the realtor is there. A good realtor is there to actually guide you through the process, so that each step is a closer step, if you will, to home ownership. So to go to, I think most realtors will suggest that someone who's looking into real estate or thinking about this should go to a lender first, someone who they trust, maybe someone who they have a relationship with, or their realtor can give them also a suggestion to see how much they can really afford. They might be surprised what they can afford.
I think, there's some basics, that when you're consulting to someone who's thinking of buying for the first time, you have to point out to them that they need to probably have had a steady job, because the lender's going to want that. There's going to need, and they may need some down payment, and
good credit.
But you need to talk to somebody who can tell you what's reasonable, what's not. The hardest part is if you ask people, especially family, they all have an opinion. And the interesting thing about our industry is that it continually changes so much, and the rules change so much, and the standards change so much, that it's good to have other people's perspective, but you really need the consultative nature of both a realtor and a finance person before you make decisions, the huge decisions, or get too excited or not excited enough about getting into the business,
And years ago when we first started, in terms of a mortgage, if you didn't have 20% down, basically you weren't going to get a mortgage.
Right.
And the times have changed. So if you don't talk with someone who's current, mortgages, those services are a menu of services. So, a good lender will tailor what you make and what you owe and what you can afford around a program that would work best for you. So
I know there's a lot of opportunities out there, but when we start talking about programs, there's different things, like there's traditional mortgages, there's FHA mortgages, there's veteran loans, and so many of these different programs have different ratios and standards, and a buyer doesn't realize they may qualify for them, but they don't even have to do all the groundwork themselves. That's why you get the professional involved. As Carol and I have talked about on previous shows, sometimes, you're thinking, well, what's keeping me out of this market is I don't have the savings. I don't have the kind of money it takes. And yet now there are some great opportunities where just in the last year, there's been a law passed where family members or anybody can start a first-time buyer's savings account in the name of somebody. And so somebody who has a wherewithal that wants to help out a buyer can actually put their money in an account that's just like the old school savings accounts,
the college accounts,
accounts, and they get a tax write-off, and the beneficiary will be able to have some down payment. So it's remarkable how, because of the way financing works nowadays, you can actually get into home ownership with a very highly leveraged, low down payment.
Sure, yes. And the importance here again is to talk to a realtor or talk to someone whose expertise is a mortgage lender, just for good counsel. It costs nothing to go talk to a realtor and get pre-qualified.
Yes.
And the same is true with a lender.
Start the process.
Start the process.
Start the dream. Now, I think I think Carol and I would agree, as we talk to folks and they start to realize they can do it. We point out that, real estate's not a real liquid commodity. So when you start to make that decision, it's a very serious decision. You're going to also want to plan on living there 2 to 3 years in most cases, just to get your early investment out if real estate is still doing well. So it's not a venue to go into lightly. It's a serious decision, but what an opportunity it is also,
It's a great opportunity, and I think it's important for first-time buyers to know it's a stepping stone.
Yes.
This might not be your forever home, but it sure has its payoffs to purchase rather than rent. And then at some point in time, you might step up to a little higher price point or a different location. I think the more homes you live in, the more you know what you really want in a home or what works best for your situation.
So what do you usually, Carol, suggest after somebody's gotten pre-qualified, they now know that they can get a mortgage and they now know what their down payment requirement is, and so they come back to their realtor. What's the first thing that you should start to do, do you think?
What I like to do is sit down and just say, what are your wants? What are your desires? What are you looking for in a home? So, for instance, their styles. Are you looking for a ranch or a 2-story? Are you looking to be in an area that's active, in town, outside of town? Do you have pets? Do you need accommodations for your pets? In other words, do you have a pet that you need to have a fence? We need to look for a place that has no fence regulations, that sort of thing.
Are schools important?
Schools are important. Internet access is very
if you're working from home nowadays.
That's right.
So all these have to be considered. And to the degree that as realtors, we have access to all the listings on the market. But we also, the hardest part, and I think I would agree, is trying to understand the competitive nature of how many people are also first-time home buyers. And, historically, unless you've been very blessed with your job or something, you're starting at probably the lower percentile of the cost of homes, and you're competing against so many people that are doing the same thing. So you don't want to go into it with, I got to have a house tomorrow, but with a practiced and discipline of looking at things that you realistically want to consider, but understand sometimes you don't get what you want the first time around because so many people are competing against you.
And it's also an educational. Every time you walk through a house, you see something that you might want or you never thought of. And like you say, you're not going to get everything you want. That's just true.
It's just trade-offs of life.
Right. But to be thoroughly educated means you've probably seen 3-4 houses that could work for you and might be an option, I guess you would say.
Sure.
But I think it's very important to work very closely with that realtor and let them know everything that you're looking for, because we can all get on the internet right now and search around and think we've got, the perfect house. You need to contact that realtor before you make any appointments or hit any buttons, so they can take you through that. And
you're going down a good road, because there's a tendency to think, well, I can just search all these public sites and I will get all this information. And frankly, you don't get any quicker. And on top of that, you risk giving up that loyalty factor for the person who's willing to be your advocate and work with you. And now you're just picking random people who may or may not be advocating for your interests, or may or may
they don't have your background.
They don't know your background. And so it's more important to create a relationship early than it is probably to start your search early, and then the search will follow.
I think the loyalty part is very important that you just touched on. And secondly, a lot of first-time buyers don't know that it's actually the seller that pays us.
Right.
So they need to use our expertise, whether it is our background or our negotiation skills or our communication skills. They need to work with us and allow us to do our business, but it costs them nothing.
Right. The commission is traditionally paid completely by the seller, even though there's maybe a relationship between the buyer and his realtor.
Yes.
It's traditionally being paid out of the closing cost by the seller. So, as you say, it's not an additional cost. So why not have that beneficiary, that loyalty and benefit of working with somebody like that? So let's say you're saying, okay, I've got my relationship going. I keep seeing these properties that are being streamed to me from the agent. What type of steps are the best to follow? I historically have suggested the first thing you do is drive by the location so you understand where it is and what it is, so that you don't end up having to spend an evening looking at a property you wouldn't buy if you would have driven by it.
I think the drive-by is the best advice yet.
Sure.
I mean, when you look at photographs now, you can enhance them. You
can make a picture look great, right?
You can make us as realtors look great.
Yeah, we can look good.
We can Photoshop.
That doesn't have to
but you really need to drive by, be acquainted with that neighborhood, and do any research that you think, if you're looking for something special. Maybe you want to be near parks. You can research all of that online, but do drive by that house. You might not like what's neighboring. It might look like a great house out in the country, and there's a factory right next door, and that isn't something that you're interested in.
Or possibly you've got a dog, and you just do not believe philosophically in invisible fences, and you pull into a community and realize there isn't a fence in the backyard anywhere in the community. You can pretty well assume there's no fences allowed, and now you know that the what's most important to you can't be even installed.
So you can rule that out, or you can narrow it down. So it's a narrowing down process. But also that agent, if they know what you're looking for, as soon as it hits the market, they can identify that property and let you know, so that you can drive by it, decide if it's for you or not, and then go make an appointment to see it.
Yeah. So now you've seen it. Now you've seen a home that you'd like to see. So what you do is you call your realtor, and they will coordinate a time that's best for you, and coordinate it with the seller, and then you actually go take a walk through the home. If you've never bought a home, it's a little foreign, the whole concept of I'm going to walk through somebody else's home, but that's what you have to do. You got to look and feel the house and see if it's the right place for you.
Sure.
And if it's a very, very nice home, you're going to get in line in a sense. You'll be taking turns with a lot of other people that are going to be doing the exact same thing. So this is where it feels a little competitive. Sometimes when you're a first-time home buyer, it's stressful enough that you're thinking of buying, but let alone to think now I'm competing. Yes. But sadly, there is a little bit of that.
Yeah, there is a little bit of that, and you need to be able to make a decision quickly.
Yes.
So that's why you've already spoken to the lender. You have that piece already in place, and now we're just trying to match the house with the program and how you're going to purchase the property.
Yes, and so that really gets you into the whole process. And so Carol, you and I have done this. You've seen the folks have looked at the home, and they're absolutely in love with the home. So now what do we do?
We go to the office and we discuss exactly all the terms and how you're going to purchase that house. But we need that pre-approval letter from the lender, because we have to convince the seller that you truly are pre-approved. Because if we don't have that, they're not going to take the chance. If there's other offers on the property, or a cash offer even, there's no reason to try to convince someone that you're going to get a pre-approval letter. You need to have that with you right then and there.
So preparedness is the secret.
Yes.
And so any realtor that's an excellent realtor will walk you through the purchase agreement process, help make sure it's structured in a fashion that's going to actually work for you, and hopefully reflect what's beneficial for the seller, since you're really trying to get the seller to say yours is the best offer also. So that's what the real estate professional does, is make sure the process there. At the end of the day, this is not an adversarial relationship. It's one where two parties are trying to come together in what's best for them both. So in that spirit, it's not a competition. It's a trying to work together with somebody to accomplish both goals. They need to sell a home, and you want to buy a home.
And when we call it a cooperation, it truly is.
Yes.
Everyone needs to give and take a little bit and work together on this. And it could be as diverse as what's included in the house, right down to what day we're going to close.
Yeah.
So there's a whole lot of negotiation that takes place. Even when the buyer walks out of the office, we as realtors have to do a whole lot of fact-finding and advocating for our client.
Yes. And so into paint the proper perspective. Right or wrong, real estate has not been designed to be a fast process. And by that, I mean it's not instantaneous. So not only do we have to do the contracts, we have to then get contracts to the other parties. The other parties have to review them. Sometimes it takes days. It's not hours. And then there may be counter offers where the seller says, well, I can't live with this, but I can live with that, so we're trying to get the two together, and it's all contract law, so you have to sign contracts. And at the
There's
time
some due diligence that needs to be done by...
And at the time you make an offer, no contract is binding without some consideration, which is money. So you have to come prepared even to have your deposit check, some money to demonstrate to the seller that you are committed to making an offer and that you'll stick with the deal. It's called earnest money, but you'll have to be able to have some earnest money available at the time you make the offer. You can't make an offer without some money.
And that's a good point, Scott, because a question that we get quite frequently is, how can we give that? Can we do that with a credit card? No, we're still pretty old-fashioned real estate, so a check is made payable. It is held in escrow. It's credited back to you at closing.
It's money that goes into an escrow account, and it's held there in limbo.
Until we close.
It's until we close, and it's to be credited to your account. But it's also the money that if you decide that on the last day of the transaction you really don't feel like you want to buy this house, that's the money that's going to be lost. And so that's why it's important to understand that it's money that you're willing to put up to show that you want to buy this house, that there's risk. It's at risk, yes. And so the offer goes back and forth, and there's counter offers, and then finally it seems that we have a deal, and everybody has signed it, and so now begins another process. Again, nothing is quick in real estate, I'm afraid to say. We have a meeting of the minds, and now becomes the part where you as a buyer are allowed to go in and do your home inspection and make a determination that everything that you think you see in this house is what you see. I like to tell people this is where the luster on the diamond goes away a little bit, because no two homes are alike and no home is perfect. There's not been a perfect home built yet. And so it's always difficult to have someone tell you that the home that you were just sure was the perfect house has a few warts on it that come with being a resale home.
And not only that, think about that. You walk through the house and you're only there 15 or 20 minutes.
Exactly.
And you fall in love with it and you make an offer. But when you have the suggested home inspection like we talked about, I think 99% of our buyers always have a home inspection.
Yes.
They have a trained professional again who will crawl in the attic, all those places we didn't go, to make sure that the house has no safety concerns.
Yeah, and mostly we're looking for health and safety issues.
You know,
we're not talking decorating. You've seen that when you went through, and so
things you didn't see.
Yeah, but once you get through that process, if there's some health and safety concerns, there may have to be some discussion with the seller again, but hopefully you've now looked at a home, you understand what you're buying. It's probably more complete picture than you had. As I say, sometimes it doesn't feel as magical because you now know more about the house than you've ever known, but that's the way the process works. It's still going to be your home.
A good inspector is so valuable, because if you don't know how a furnace works, or that the furnace has filters you need to change, that's what they're there. There's a teaching seminar to kind of show you the mechanicals of the house and take a look at the house. And again, spend some time. It might take a couple hours to get that inspection done, but you now know more about that house than you did when you just walked through it. It's so valuable.
And speaking about our podcast, I think in future podcasts, we'll try to have an inspector come in and try to talk about what the process is so that a person understands what they're getting when they have a home inspection, because nobody's going to be able to tell your home's perfect, but they can certainly tell you things that they see up front, you know? So we get past the home inspection process, and everybody's agreed that the home's still nice. Then there is in the background, and this is why things stretch out. The bank is making a determination whether or not they are going to finance the house. Now, they don't have no reason not to, except for they need to establish that the value of the home is fair and is the same as what you think it's worth, because otherwise the percentage of down payment you have would be off by some percentage. So they need to make sure that if you're getting, say, a 95% mortgage, that the value of the home is what it is, and with your down payment, they can finance 95%. And that process will take another couple weeks. The approval after that, it goes into the famous loan committees. We always hear jokes about those, but it goes into underwriting, as they call it. So people are now approving your credit and approving your appraisal and approving all the information they have about the title of the house. And during that process, it's just a black void for us good old folks that are waiting around for the transaction to go. But this whole process is going to take you 30 to 45 days in a traditional market.
Yes.
Obviously, there's times it's faster and slower. But you need to come prepared to realize that for up to 45 days, you may not know if your transaction's complete, and then we're going to go to closing. And then that's when you're finally going to be able to get into the house that you so badly want to get into. But it's now been probably, with looking at homes and everything, at least 2 months. And you can imagine how 2 months seems like an eternity in any transaction anymore, given what the world's like.
Right,
So.
and sometimes at closing you don't get the keys simply because the seller needs time to move out.
Yeah, and so imagine if you're in a rental, you start this process. You need to start the process. If you want to make it when your rent's up, you better be starting this process as much as 90 days earlier if you want to make it work, or be able to extend your lease on a month-to-month basis. Right. So there's things to consider on both sides, and there's a lot of people to coordinate. Yeah. So that was kind of just a little bit of our beginning of how to get into a house if you're a first-time home buyer. In future podcasts, we hope to cover some of those different areas of that, but I just thought it would be good today to share some of those ideas. So with that, we'd like to thank you for watching Land and Legacy, and look forward to seeing you again.